Hi, this is Matthew. Going to talk about another Beach Boys album, the next one in 1968 called Friends. But I will mention also there's a Best of the Beach Boys Volume 3 also that's after this. But Friends is the main thing I'm here to talk about. Sales of Smile, of course, didn't work, and Smile didn't happen. And then that tour of Hawaii didn't happen, that live album thing. So they went again to Brian Wilson's house. Instead of being like a total lo-fi whatever, they actually got proper studio equipment and brought in people to play on stuff. So this is more like a proper album, but probably the last in that lo-fi kind of style that they had been doing for a while. And so that will be this one. Also the first album in actual true stereo instead of just being in duophonic fake stereo and only mono. No mono after from this point onward, it seems. So that's cool. They also put out something not on here called Do It Again. I don't know where we'll find that. Here, it was in other countries put on to Friends, but not here. So it's not on the version I've heard. On Apple Music at least. I mean, the song is out there, but I don't know where it will appear. Maybe on that Best of collection, we'll find out. But that did not do well. This did, that got to 47 on Billboard, and I think maybe 8th in the UK. So much better there than here. Bruce Johnson didn't like it very well. He didn't like where it was going. He wanted, I think, the harder stuff. They chose not to do that because it was everywhere, and they didn't want to do that kind of thing. It wasn't their style. Also, they did try to tour and lost quite a bit of money because they hadn't toured in a while. Then they all got into the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who the Beatles were influenced by, and they heard him in France. Whereas the Beatles heard him speak in Wales, and they were kind of interested, and they did make a tour with him, and I think Buffalo Springfield and somebody else, I think, but I'm not sure. But they tried to have where they played and then he spoke. It was very unpopular, and that didn't happen. In fact, one got canceled 20 minutes before it started, I think, in Queens, because there were only 8 people in a 16-something arena that bought tickets. And that's not going to work. So that didn't work out. Then Mike Love did go to Rishikesh, where his retreat was, where the Beatles were, and Mia Farrow and others had gathered. He was there, I think, March and April, and left. Beatles also left. His popularity got very bad, the Maharishi did, and so that didn't work. But the transcendental meditation stuff did influence the Beach Boys. Carl and I think maybe Mike Love and I think Dennis Wilson maybe all kind of got into it, and there's some influence on here, and there's actually a song called that on the album, interestingly enough, on here, so that's kind of cool. As far as that goes, so there was some influence, but not a popular guy. Did his thing, well, gosh, did well until I think last decade and died. I think he ended up in Iowa and had a school over there. I took a offshoot religion class where it was offshoots of other religions. It was kind of new American religions, basically things that we had most of the things were from here that shut off from other religions, but I took that in college. The transcendental thing was mentioned briefly, and he had a website, and he had all kinds of pictures, and I think maybe some video at the time. It's been a long time now. It was before social media really was anything when I knew about it. But yeah, he died, but we'll move on to the album anyway and see what is there, because it's a neat album, and I really enjoyed especially the main single off of it. The original release had on side 1 We have Meant for You, which is most of these are really short tracks, so I'll give you the length just because like most things are not even under 2 minutes long. It's just like, for example, this first one, Meant for You, by Wilson and Mike Love track is Mike Love. It is a whopping 38 seconds. This is a trend on this album. Most things are very short, but they're neat songs, but they're very short most of the time. And then we have Friends. Brian Wilson, everybody except Mike Love. So you've got Brian, Carl, Dennis, and Al Jardine. Because Mike Love when he left, they started recording. He came back, and they were obviously still recording things. So he's not on everything. I really like this one. This is the best, I think. Obviously Fleshed Out one. Fleshed Out, I should say. Fullest, maybe, to me. Carl Wilson and Brian Wilson, and on that one, probably my favorite on here. I think I've heard it on another compilation. Like, oh, I've heard this. Nothing else I'd heard. Then we go to Wake the World, sorry, which is Brian Wilson and Al Jardine's song. Brian Wilson and Carl Wilson on vocals, lots of that. Brian Wilson is still somewhat of a factor here. That is a minute and 29 seconds. 2:32 for Friends. I forgot to mention that. Just because these tracks are so really short most of the time. And then Be Here in the Morning is next. Brian Wilson, Carl Wilson, Mike Love, Al Jardine, all of them wrote this one. Jardine and Carl Wilson are vocals here. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. See what I mean? When a Man Meets a Woman, Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson, and Brian Wilson, Carl Wilson, and Dennis Wilson, and then two other kind of co-writer guys, John Corbett and Steve Corfith and John Parks, I believe. Brian Wilson on vocals. Yeah, they got some co-writers on this stuff. 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And then we close it Passing By, Brian Wilson, with Brian Wilson, Carl Wilson, and Al Jardine vocaling it for a minute, a whole whopping 24 seconds. Then we go to side 2. And then Annie the Healer, which is about some of the Maharishi stuff that they encountered. Brian Wilson and Mike Love. Mike Love on vocals. A minute and 51 seconds. It's a pretty simple arrangement, like bongo drums, so it's a pretty simple arrangement on this one. Little Bird, Brian Wilson and Steve Calahatch, that was one of the other co-writer guys. Brian Wilson and Dennis Wilson and Brian Wilson for 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Be Still, B. Wilson and that Calahatch guy again. Dennis Wilson on this one for a minute and 24 seconds. Busy Doing Nothing. But yeah, I think this is like, yeah, some things are about like things that Brian Wilson just found, simple about where he was living and stuff. Brian Wilson is the writer and on the vocals. 3 minutes and 5 seconds. The longest track I think on here, maybe. I think it's the one where he kind of gives directions to his house, but he doesn't give directions to his house. I think that's the one. Diamond Head. Brian Wilson and a couple of other songwriter guys. Avascola and Rich and Jim Ackley. It's an instrumental for 3 minutes and 39 seconds, so that might be close to the longest one on here. And then we close with Transcendental Meditation. Brian Wilson, Love, and Jardine on this one, with Brian Wilson on vocals for a minute and 51 seconds. 25-minute long album, but cool stuff anyway. Very interesting thing. But yeah, kind of cool stuff. The reissue tracks for the bonus discs that have been available in a couple of different versions. because there were some leftover things they didn't use. And some got reworked elsewhere, I think, later on. We have Breakaway, Brian Wilson and Murray Wilson. Oh yeah, he also Murray Wilson bass vocals on a track too, which I'm sure we'll see that. But yeah, he helped write that one. I'm surprised they're on speaking terms, but I guess they still must have been. Brian and Al and Brian Wilson on this one. 2 minutes and 57 seconds. Celebrate the News, Brian Wilson and some guy named Greg Jacobson. Dennis Wilson. Oh, sorry, Dennis Wilson and Jacobson wrote it, and then Dennis Wilson on vocals. 3 minutes and 5 seconds, the longer one. We're together again. Ron Wilson. I don't remember who he is. I think if he's a cousin or something. I forget who that is right now. Brian Wilson on vocals. I'm also doing this time Brian Wilson and Meredith, or whatever, I forget her name now. They had their daughter Carney Wilson from, yes, Wilson Phillips. That's the Wilson in Wilson Phillips, I believe. If I remember right, I could be wrong, but I think so. I'm going to have to cover that album after this. I'm going to have to do a brief cover of that album, or a brief review of it, because it's people from Brian Wilson's kids and then Michelle Phillips' kid, I think, for the Mamas and Papas. So I might have to cover that one. They only ever had one album, so I might have to do that one. Plus, there's some darn catchy tunes on it. I might have to do that one after we do the Beach Boys, just to kind of tie into that. But 1 minute and 49 seconds. And then Walk On By, which is the Burt Bacharach song that Dionne Warwick did. Brian Wilson and Dennis Wilson. That would be fun to hear, that one. Only a 55-second version of it, though. And then Old Folks at Home with Old Man River, like a medley thing. Stephen Foster, Jerome Kern, Asher Hammerstein. The second, Brian Wilson and Mike Love for 2 minutes and 52 seconds. So, again, very short things. Oh, there was a compilation album of called Wake the World of Friends Sessions. It was around as well. Okay, yeah. It's just some alternate takes and versions and stuff. And there was a Sunshine Tomorrow and Academy Music the 2020 sessions. Oh, there was some kind of Beach Boys Harmonic Orchestra release. They didn't want to mess with that, so they did put out a physical version of this album here. But what we had in the compilation from the same sessions, though, we have an alternate version of Meant for You with the session intro, Friends, a backing track of that, an a cappella version of Friends. That would be fun to hear some of those. Wake the World, an alternate version. Be Here in the Morning, the backing track of it. A take of When a Man Needs a Woman. Another alternate version of that same song. Passing By alternate version. Any of the Healers session excerpt from that session. An a cappella version of the same song. A backing track for Little Bird. An a cappella version of Little Bird. I was mistaken, Be Still with a session excerpt. Even Steven, which is an early version of Busy Doing Nothing, but they changed the name on it. An alternate version of Diamond Head with a session excerpt also. It's new song Transcendental Meditation with backing vocals. So backing track. So it's just kind of an early version of Transcendental Meditation, essentially. Another version of that, the backing track with a session excerpt attached. Another version of that same song with a cappella. My Little Red Book, which is a Burt Bacharach, Hal David song. Doesn't give vocals on that one. Away. Okay, that's another one of theirs. I'm Confessing It was a demo. Then I'm Confession with You're as Cool as Me, take 1. You're as Cool as Can Be, take 2. Sorry, not As Me, Can Be on both of those. Sorry. Be in the Morning, Darling. So I guess an early version of that, another version of that one. Our New Home. And there's something called New Song. Be Still, alternate track of that. Rock and Roll Woman. Time to Get Alone, alternate version demo. Entitled 1/25/68. Maybe that's when they started to record it. I don't know. Passing by demo. Shadows Fall to the Man, original 1966 track mix. Okay. Our People, finally. We have Al Jardine on vocals, electric bass. Bruce Johnson on vocals and keyboard and piano. Mike Love on vocals. Brian Wilson vocals, organ, and piano. Yeah, there's quite a bit of organ on this one. Yeah, he plays some nice organ on this one. And percussion is uncertain. Carl Wilson vocals and guitar and bass. Look at the vocals, guitar, bass. Sorry. Dennis Wilson vocals, harmonium, and congas. Uncertain, I think, on the congas, but our guest people. Marilyn Wilson and Busy Doing Nothing, and yeah, Marilyn Wilson, that was Brian's wife. Marilyn, sorry. I was thinking of Meredith, my coworker on Fridays. It's Marilyn. Connie Wilson is their kid. Some vocal work there. Ray Wilson, he did some bass vocals on Be Here in the Morning. So yeah, their dad is still, I guess, sort of around. Our session guys, though, we have Jim Ackley keyboard and guitar, Arnold Beltnick violin, Jimmy Bond upright bass, Norman Botnick viola. Oh, are they related? David Burke viola, David Cohen guitar, Rick Caton trumpet, John DeVoogd on violin, DeVoogd on violin, Bonnie Douglas violin. She's back. I think some of these guys are Wrecking Crew, if I remember right. Don Englert clarinet and saxophone, on Estes vibraphone, woodblocks, chimes, Dick Forrest trumpet, Jim Gruden drums, woodblocks, bells, congas and timbales, Bill Green saxophone, Jim Horn saxophone and clarinet, Dick Hyde tuba and flugelhorn, Norm Jeffries drums. Yeah, there's nice drums on this one. Robert C. Jung saxophone. They sound really nice. Myra Hirsch. What? Different. Three guys on sax. It's reading that really weird. Remember Kelly cello, William Krulish violin, Jacqueline Lescardin cello, Tommy Morgan harmonica, bass harmonica, Leonard Wolarski violin, Jim McGlory saxophone, clarinet, bass clarinet, and Ali Mitchell trumpet. G. Pello drums. Again, some nice drums on this thing. Bill Perkins saxophone, Rich electric bass, upright bass, and ukulele. And there's some ukuleles here. Jay Rosen violin, Ralph Schaefer violin. Yeah, a lot of the Wrecking Crew guys are back. Tom Scott bass, flute, and saxophone. David Scher oboe and saxophone. Paul Scher violin. Tony Tarrant trumpet. Avascola banjo guitar and lap steel guitar. And that is all of our guys. Our technical guys are Jim Lockhart, engineer, and that is it. You have just one guy in engineering. But yeah, a lot more session guys, like an actual studio now. Brian Wilson is still the primary person. I think Beach Boys are still credited, but it's mostly Brian Wilson. He considered it kind of his second solo album, Pet Sounds being the first. In some later interviews, he said that. I think now Brian Wilson will take less of a role in things, but I think will pop up occasionally. Then, because this album did so badly, Capitol goes and does, of course, let's put out another compilation, and we're just going to call it The Beach Boys, or The Best of the Beach Boys, Volume 3. So we'll see what's on that one. I've not looked at this yet. Side 1 has God Only Knows, and then Dance, Dance, Dance. 409, again, even though that's already been released. I think some of these were on the UK one. Nice to see them popping up on this version. The Little Girl I Once Knew. Frosty the Snowman from the Christmas album. That's interesting. Girl Don't Tell Me. Side 2 is Surfin'. Yeah, that's interesting. That's the first single. Heroes and Villains. She knows me too well. Darlin'. At least that's fairly current. Good Vibrations. Nice to have that one on here. The British one, this should be a lot better. It sank like a stone over here. Got to like 1 something on the charts, and it got to 13 in the UK. So a much better placing, maybe a better track listing. We'll go look and see what they had in the UK. Oh, okay, there's 14 songs instead of our 11, so we should have some extra tracks. Do It Again, there it is. Darn it, darn you British. That's good to have that one on here. The Warmth of the Sun, 409 again. Catch a Wave, The Lonely Sea, Longtail Texan, Wild Honey. Yeah, interesting. These are both interesting. I would take both of these. Probably some more friendly tracks as far as people picking it up for the first time, having some stuff they might actually know instead of some kind of B-side tracks on ours. But Darlin', Please Let Me Wonder, Let 'Em Run Wild, Country Air, I Know There's an Answer, that's some Pet Sounds, Friends, Heroes and Villains, and that is it. I would take both of these. There's some interesting stuff on both, some lesser known things on both. Do It Again would be nice because that was like the other single that's not on here, that's on other versions of this. I'm assuming it's going to pop up somewhere that I can hear it again. I'm sure I can find it, just I don't know what it's going to come from. I may have to go and find it anyway, just because it's a fun track. The first time they did any kind of surfing type songs for Do It Again, but not on our version of Friends. It's over on other versions in the UK, in other countries, not here. I don't know about Capitol in Canada. I assume it's the same release there as here. I know that it's for the Beatles. Clearly Capitol was not thinking they were any good, even though they have really good stuff. So someone wasn't listening to their albums. They're missing out. Bad executives. Listen to your stuff before you say you don't back it. You may not do as well, but there are those who like it, and I'm one of them, even though I was not around at the time. But we'll go from that to still in 68. I'm going to cover this anyway. It is an album of instrumental songs called Stack O Tracks. It just stack like the letter O, then tracks. It is various instrumental versions of things without any vocals. Capitol being desperate, but I'm going to cover it anyway just to see what they're like without the vocals on them. It is streamable, so they did put it out, so I'm going to review it anyway. It's weird, it's different, I'm going to do it anyway, I don't care. And then we'll go to 69 after that, but I will review this one next. I hope everything will be in stereo. I assume so. If nothing else, if you don't want vocals on things, you could pull that album out. If you just want something to talk over or background music without any singing, you could pull that one out for giggles and go, what the heck is that? See if anybody knows what song they're listening to by the instrumental stuff, which I pay attention to, but not everyone does. So that would be fun to see what is on there. I looked at it. I forgot what was on it right now, but we'll do that next time with Stack O tracks in 68. I think right towards the end of the year. Capitol being desperate, which is kind of sad because and the Beatles were still doing pretty well, but they didn't seem to care about the Beach Boys, which is sad because, again, this was a good album that got ignored and I think got rediscovered by people later. But a very enjoyable thing. I think maybe our last time we get to be on the lo-fi kind of setting for Brian's mansion or house, whatever you want to call it. We'll find out later where other albums are, but we'll do Stack of Tracks next time. And I will see you guys in another video.